Welcome. My name is Jackie. I'm from Vendasta, and today we're going to tell you how we took a complex enterprise platform and try to inject this thing called product-led growth into it. Let's get started. So here I am. I'm Jackie. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Vendasta, and so a lot of what I do is look at new trends and where the industry is going and try to assess our 3 to 5 year roadmap and what type of technology and strategies we should be implementing. Today, we're going to cover 3 different topics. One is, why the heck did we decide to go with product-led growth? How did we know it was right for our business? And what were some of the triggers that we identified that we needed to make the switch? Secondly, we're going to just cover how Vendasta aligned for growth. There were some fundamental foundational pieces that we had to put in place before we could just jump all in. And then lastly, how the heck did we try the first step? What did that look like? What was our process to get there? And when did we know that we were ready to start putting a little bit of fuel on the fire around product-led growth? All right, let's get started. Why product-led growth? So to give you a little bit of context for today's discussion, I'm just going to briefly describe what Vendasta does. Vendasta believes in driving local economies. We think it's the lifeblood of society. We think small business has a place in our economies and in our communities. And so we really want to help drive local and businesses thrive. And what that means is really helping them transition to technology and to digital. Small businesses have sort of been late to the game in adopting new technology, and for the right reasons. I mean, they've got a lot to do and not a lot of resources, and they're projected to do it at quite a fast rate over the next few years. The problem for small business is that they're totally overwhelmed. They're inundated with the number of apps and solutions available in the market. There's so many SaaS solutions now compared to where there were 10 years ago. They're constantly getting phone calls from vendors that are trying to sell them things. They don't really have a lot of time because they're not actually spending time on their craft or what they actually do. And lastly, when they actually purchase a SaaS solution, the fragmented experience is just terrible. There's multiple logins, multiple bills to pay, multiple vendors to deal with, tools to learn, teams and users to set up. So it's quite disjointed, and therefore that's causing the slow shift to digital. Vendasta doesn't work directly with the small business, and I'll tell you a little bit about why this is important. We believe small business, because they're so busy, they turn to a trusted expert. So you think about someone looking for accounting software to digitize all their bookkeeping, they would likely turn to an accountant or someone who knows that bookkeeping. If they're looking to get more digital marketing expertise, they often turn to an agency or someone with that expertise. And so what Vendasta does is we work with those cloud brokers. Cloud brokers is sort of a crazy term, but really it means anyone that brokers SaaS solutions to local businesses. And it could be in the form of a bank or an insurance company, an existing SaaS provider that sells one solution that wants to sell many. We provide a complete end-to-end platform to do that more effectively and at scale, so they can better support their customers, they can fix that disjointed, fragmented experience, and they themselves and their teams can do so in a very cohesive, integrated way. So just a little bit about what we do. It's important to understand that we empower our partners, a channel partner, to then sell to that end SMB. And that's really just setting the stage of how we went to product-led growth and why it was so important. So in a nutshell, our growth, Vendasta's growth, if we were to employ product-led growth tactics, it would actually mean, how do we empower our partners to be more product-led in the way they go to market and helping some of these SMBs? So we had 2 real user personas we were looking at. One was Vendasta as a company acquiring, growing, and retaining those customers. But really what that meant was helping our partners one level beneath us who are serving SMBs acquire, activate, retain, and grow those SMBs better at scale. So when we started diving into who were our customers, we broke them into cohorts, and a lot of our org structure and strategy followed along with this. We saw that we had one group, and we call them smaller cloud brokers, or our mid-market group. They had a lot different attributes and behaviors than our enterprise clients. Generally, our enterprises had hundreds or thousands of employees, hundreds and thousands of SMB or small business relationships that they served, and they did that at scale. Whereas the small cloud brokers were often more boutique. They were higher end, high touch agencies. Often the purchaser was the decision maker, and they had a lot different types of attributes. And we were trying to use the same high touch strategy to serve them both. So really the first impetus to Vendasta, adopting product-led growth techniques was simply because we couldn't figure out a way to help support these smaller cloud brokers at scale. We were, adopting a really high-touch onboarding sales process. When you're selling an enterprise platform, it's sort of, you want to take them through everything step by step, all their teams. But what we weren't able to do was double the amount of staff that we had. And so to double the amount of customers or partners that we were serving, we had to use a different strategy to help them serve themselves and learn the platform themselves without kind of getting all of our unit economics out of whack. We saw this as a tremendous opportunity because the demand for this cohort was quite explosive. We saw a ton on our self signups that were part of this category, but we knew that if we didn't give them a great experience and the product didn't lead that journey, then they would churn, and we were seeing that churn effect happen. As we started to unpeel, what does product-led growth really mean? What does it look like? We looked at these core tenets. First, it has to be very valuable, provide that instant value, that engaging experience. And then lastly, we had to know enough about our customers to actually predict what they need so that they didn't have to find all the pieces themselves. We could put it right in front of them. And as we looked at these core tenets of product-led, we said, wait a second, all of these things that the product-led strategy prescribes is actually what our current customers need as well. And so what we found is that, by providing a valuable, engaging, and predictive experience, we could actually migrate and expand our existing customer base. So it wasn't just about acquiring new customers. It was about how do we provide an overall better experience for someone who may have come for one thing, but identifies and adopts the rest of the platform. So it was really that, how do we acquire new, but really expand our existing customer base and do so in a way that they wanted as well. The last reason was simply because this is what the new reality is. I mean, B2B software is, in our consumer minds, really no different than the software that we consume in our personal lives. How many of us would sign a demo form only to be qualified, only to be set up for a demo and be presented on the key benefits of video sharing and hosting and content in order to ultimately purchase Netflix? Like, we wouldn't. It's bonkers to think that, right? We would sign up, we would look at the content, maybe watch a couple shows, understand what that free trial experience looks like, and then move on to the next one, to Disney Plus, if it wasn't meeting our needs. And that is what we're finding, according to Forrester and according to what we see, is really what's happening in our business lives as well. And so what we've identified is that the market is moving in this direction, and disrupt or be disrupted. We saw that it was a massive shift for Vendasta to start to try this, and highly risky, especially with our current customer base. Could we support the experience and the quality that they deserve while also trying to employ new tactics to acquire new customers? It became a risk, but something that we identified we just need to do. So chapter 1 in summary, why go product led? Well, 1, it was to serve a new customer, a growing customer cohort. 2 is that we saw a lot of the strategies related directly to what our current customers needed, and really a beautiful experience is something that everyone takes part in, and a better pricing model and a better go-to-market. And then lastly, this is where the future is going, which is great that we're all attending this summit and learning what each other is doing to go in this direction. All right, chapter 2. How we aligned for growth. So before we jumped right in with 2 feet, what did we do tactically to actually set up for this? Well, one of the things that I think is very, very key as you're looking at this in hindsight, what I wish I would have known earlier on, is how much your organizational design affects your ability to grow and learn and move quickly in adopting something like product-led growth. When we started to there was a core group of us that Vendasta is at about 320 people now, but the core product-led team was probably about 6 to 10 people, give or take, on a different, and we would meet regularly. And what we started to identify is, wait a second, this really isn't just about the product. This is an entire go-to-market strategy, and it doesn't really just hit the product management group. This changes the way we market and the way we look at marketing, really. It's more about that education, more specific, more mass customization, but really a tailored experience. Sales needs to change and look at the way that it's not once the product experience is exposed before the sale is made, you really have to rely on the product, but you also have to change from a salesperson to be a lot more consultative. It's about, here, let me show you the best way, and let me show you case examples of how our customers are finding a lot of value. Because at the end of the day, our products are really just tools. And if they solve a need, really what a salesperson's benefit is I'm going to show you the best way to drive the most and maximum value from that tool in a high touch way. And so our sales team really had to think about, how do we change to support and really grow with the product as our ally, not as our adversary. And lastly, pricing. We completely rebooted our pricing, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And we're actually doing version 2 of that in the new year here, looking at what is a barrier in pricing, what is a barrier not just in functionality, but how do we strip away everything and look at what are the key benefits and core value and the metrics really that our partners want to drive when they sign up for the platform. How do we strip away all of the complexity, all of the deal crafting, really just to get it down to that, so that anyone can self-sign up, see that wow moment, see that customer impact that our platform is making in their businesses' lives, and really pricing is just an afterthought. So the first thing we did is we established a culture of growth. We brought everyone, we split out sort of this cross-functional group. It was a whole division that was focused on our mid-market customer segment. And rather than just having sort of product teams, which I'll talk about later, we really went cross-functional with end-to-end customer experience. But when we kicked off with that division, we established a set of core values. Now, Vendasta has its own set of core values, but what we wanted to do was really look at, if we're going to pull this off, if we're going to be agile and learn, we need to create that culture. And so we talked about this in our meetings, being empathetic, understanding our users deeply, being creative about the way that we approach solutions, because the way that the market reacts and proposes solutions might not be at the pace that we are choosing to learn and identify them. And so we had to think about things a lot differently and be creative in our approach. We had to be tenacious, and then of course we had to be frugal. The tricky part with adopting a product-led growth strategy is, at least for us, we couldn't slow the growth of our company. It wasn't sort of like, okay, let's step back from business as usual and let's just try this thing. And hey, if we don't actually grow, that's okay, we try. No, this has to be done in tandem with our existing core business. As we continued to drive that growth and see the growth of what was working, we had to make sure that anything we did just outperformed that. It couldn't actually take us a step back. And so because of that, you're not, fortunate to have endless resources. You have to be a little bit frugal and scrappy in the way that you tried things and experimented. So along with core values, we really wanted to establish a set of guiding principles. So one was, and this was really important as we sort of mashed all the teams together, is that we are on one team. It's not sales versus marketing versus product versus customer success. It is one team. We're all on team customer success. And along with that, we needed to identify what the metrics were that were important, and how did we prioritize the order in which we looked at product leadifying our platform, because that really drove some of the prioritization decisions. And lastly, creating a culture of agility was something that it's really easy to think of in theory, but it really meant establishing a rhythm around the number of experiments we were running, what the experiment template proposal looked like, and the rate at which we were running and sharing those experiments became something in itself that we made as a key focus in an OKR. So to give you a little bit of a sense, prior to our product-led strategies, this is sort of what it looked like. So our marketing team was responsible for generating that traffic. The same, you guys all know this, MQL, SQ. At that point, sales took it, converted the customer, handed it off. So it was really throwing it over the line. And the biggest point here is that the product experience began after the conversion. We were part of that traditional model. When we moved to more of a product-led strategy, things shifted a little bit. What we did was we introduced a self-sign-up to the platform prior to any BDR, business development rep, giving the ability to give a demo. And so this small change shifted a lot of things. It shifted the responsibilities of the teams. It shaped the way that the teams work together. You can see here that, once the product leads that customer experience, it's not, the sales pitch has to change. It's not about discovering what the heck this is, because they've already seen what it does. It's really about highlighting those key sizzle pieces and the key benefits of the platform. We also had to think about everyone now as a customer. It's no longer prospect versus customer. And as soon as you sign that contract and pay us $1 that you're a customer. No, 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 everyone is a customer. They just might not be paying yet. But if they're using the platform, we have to support them and encourage them and grow them in the same way we would a partner that is paying us, with a signed contract. And lastly, customer success is no longer a team. It really becomes an outcome, and it becomes everyone's responsibility. So marketing, success, sales, product, they're intermingling and they're working together on how are we ushering people towards success with the platform. So the first thing we did was we established our North Star metric. We said, okay, as a division, now Vendasta as a company who serves enterprise customers and those mid-market segment, we have a different set of North Star. But what we did was looking specifically at this customer cohort, we needed to identify what does success look like for this group and for our division as a whole. And so this is something that's up in our office today, and it's really driving the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis. It is, how can we get the total number of what we consider our partners or cloud brokers and really their customers to discover, self-sign up, adopt, and attain profitability, which really means what we call getting over the valley of death, where the subscription they pay, they actually end up making more money off of the platform and what they're doing and what they're selling, then we become a profit center rather than a cost center. And so everyone is focused on how do we do that? And the two strategies we employed were, could we adopt a product accelerated route? And could we keep the sales acceleration continuing to go in tandem with that while testing those two strategies and going back and forth? And so really what we were all driving was that clear, frictionless experience via a product-led approach to growth, but by also empowering our frontline teams to know exactly what that customer needs and be able to reach out to them at that point in time. So when we first did this, we aligned around function. We said, okay, marketing, you're responsible for acquiring, and then our SDRs convert and set up and onboard. And we started to lay out rituals and sprint kickoffs around our customer journey funnel and structure the teams around that. This worked really, really well. It created team cohesion, but we've actually taken that a step further here, this most recent iteration, and we've created more cross-functional teams around specific goals. And so one team of, a sales development rep, a marketing team, a product team will all be focused on how are we acquiring new customers, and they have a singular OKR or singular metric that they are working together to drive. So it no longer becomes about marketing. Hey, you generated MQLs, but sales is saying those are all poor quality leads. No, 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 they're all working toward the exact same thing. And same with our activation, retention, and growth team. And we translated that to forming our roadmap. So we have growth teams that are fundamentally focused on just these things. It's about inside the product or outside, everyone's working together on driving key outcomes for our customers around these three things. The last thing we did, in order to, it's cool that you set up everyone's org a little bit differently, but what does this actually mean? And if you don't translate that organizational design into your daily rituals, it doesn't really mean anything. And so the third thing we did, which I would recommend, is create that pulse. It's not enough to say you're on the acquisition team. Stand-ups change, the way you kick off sprints change, the way you plan OKRs needs to be as those squads or as those groups. The dashboards that you monitor success need to show those shared outcomes or goals. And so we started to see this shift happening even in the way that our teams sit together and collaborate. It's been really cool to see that cross-functionality truly breeds alignment, and it breeds that seeks to understand mentality, where they're no longer throwing things over the wall. They really want to understand each other's perspective to see if they can add a different perspective there. And the last thing is, really fostering a culture of growth, structuring your organization to drive those outcomes, and lastly, developing that pulse to make sure that you're set up to grow. Last chapter, almost at the end. So how do you execute? And this is all about, it's okay if your baby's ugly, because boy, that was definitely something we were afraid of. So we experimented. We wanted to take our first bite out of product-led growth and what this means. So what we did was we introduced a new subscription tier that was the free, and anyone could sign up for free to try this out. Before we did that, we have a ton of hesitations and questions though. Okay, what happens if this cannibalizes revenue and sales tanks? Can we simplify the experience enough so that someone can actually self-sign up without getting lost and dropping off? And if we simplify it too much, is that going to actually get them to the value that the platform needs to drive? Will people engage if we can't give them that hands-on support? And are we just going to burn leads all day long if we start to introduce something and they just flop on the other side? So this was really a gut check of, no, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. But eventually, and Brendan, our CEO, just drove it and said, I don't care if it's ready. We're starting this. We're taking the first swing, and we're going to set up our monitor, our metrics properly to make sure if it's not working, we can pull back and course correct. So just to give you this, these numbers have been a little bit tweaked and anonymized just for privacy, but they're directionally accurate. And what happened was, before we had our self-sign-up experience, this is the number of closes we had per month generally. Once we introduced that free subscription or free tier, it changed, and it started to change quite dramatically. And what we thought going into this, our hypothesis was that, yeah, we might decrease our cost of acquisition because people can self-select, they can try it on their own, and they can really get up and running without us having to onboard them and show them everything. So that made sense. If we increase the number of partners while remaining our total CAC the same, then the cost to acquire an average partner obviously goes down. CAC payback, though, getting them to that value so they're actually paying back the cohort, is something we didn't anticipate, but that went down, and which is really cool to see that they were actually finding value in the aggregate of the cohort. But the thing that totally surprised us, we thought conversion was going to go down quite a bit, because if you're adding more leads to the top who sign up, then obviously, you know, the denominator changes. You can't have as good of a conversion, but it actually went up. And the crazy thing is, when our BDRs sat down to have a conversation with these prospects, they were way more qualified because they had gone in, they poked around. They weren't just tire kicking to see what this was all about. They were really about, I want to understand this module, and how do I learn from the best who have come before me. And our BDRs were able to have a really pointed conversation about the platform and how to see value in it. So you guys made it through. That was it in a nutshell. What did we cover today? We talked about why did we go product-led growth, and I encourage you to think about what is driving you to consider a product-led growth approach in your company. It might not be right. Hindsight, I wish we would have done it earlier, because it's definitely just the way products are going, but think critically about what's leading you there. The second is, how are you aligned for growth? It might not be your team organizational design, but you need to put some foundational building blocks in place to make sure that you're structured to optimize and know exactly what you're optimizing for. And lastly, think about, if you are going down that path, what is holding you back? If you're afraid that your baby's ugly, it's okay. Everyone's baby is a little bit ugly, but that's how we learn. And what the feedback was, and where we saw our customers were getting stuck, became the roadmap and the prioritization of what we needed to tackle next, rather than just hypothesizing it. The cool thing is, everything that we learn at Vendasta, we try to apply, because of our channel strategy, to our customers. And so we're drinking our own champagne or eating our own dog food, and then everything we learn, we release out to our customers. And so if you're interested in getting a freemium suite of digital marketing solutions and you serve small businesses, I'd love to hear from you. Hit me up, check me out. If you've got any questions, I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any advice to give me, would equally love to hear from you. Thanks for listening today, and take care.